Hello everybody, my name is Caitlin Jockmans, and today I'm going to be sharing a written language strategy presentation for my Instructional Strategies for Learners with Disabilities class with Dr. Day. And we're going to be talking today about some different strategies that teachers can implement in the classroom for those who maybe are struggling, or just some different strategies in general that can really build those written language skills and word recognition skills. And we'll kind of be touching on some different ways that we can, as teachers, modify the lesson or accommodate those students to better fit their needs and their different learning styles. So let's go ahead and get into the presentation. So the first thing that we'll be talking about is what is written language. So as defined in our textbook, Teaching Strategies for Learners with Special Needs, written language subsumes the three areas of handwriting, spelling, and written language. Written language is the visual representation of a system of spoken words. Graphemes are the smallest units of language. So written language is a way that we can really express and visually communicate what is being spoken orally. Written language is extremely important, and it's a really broad and encompassing area of instruction that really needs a lot of evidence-based research and different practices that are heavily evidence-based in order to make sure that we're meeting those state requirements and those learning goals for each student individually. So a grapheme is another word for a letter. So a grapheme phoneme correspondence would mean how a sound and how a letter can correspond to one another, as an example. So the first strategy that I really am so excited to talk about is a strategy that I'm sure that most of you have heard about. It is the strategy of a word wall. And word wall is a strategy that has been talked a lot about by a lot of different professors and researchers. But Dr. Julie Jackson actually introduced me to the idea of an interactive word wall, which I really love. And an interactive word wall, we'll kind of talk about that in 1 second, but a word wall is simply a space on a classroom wall where a teacher will post words. And those words are usually high frequency or vocabulary words with different tiers, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. The recommendation and what I found from Dr. Julie Jackson's work was about 3 to 5 words per week, which is also what our textbook states. So introducing those 3 to 5 words per week will, I think, total to around 351 words. I believe I could be wrong though. So I will try to comment on this presentation for the exact words that would equal up to in a typical school year. But that is like the recommendation for kindergarten. Intentionality is key. So include multiple vocabulary tiers and integrate them into the curriculum. So it's important to not only introduce those words, but to apply them into practice. So giving children opportunities to practice them in written expression or verbal expression is really, really, really important for them to make that connection between ways that we can use those words outside of just that introduction. Intentionality is key. So bringing those words up throughout different lessons, throughout different subject areas is really crucial. Cross-cutting those subject areas is a great way to build those connections. Choose words intentionally. That is something that is really important with word walls. You don't want to just pick and choose random words. You want to pick and choose words that those children are going to be using and seeing often, especially in different texts. Skills that word walls will aim to focus on include fluency, word recognition, and vocabulary expansion and growth. So in the beginning of the year, you'll start with a completely empty wall, which is so exciting. And throughout the year, those words will slowly build up. And you don't have to post all 3 to 5 words per week, but I would probably recommend doing it. Explicit practice is required, as we talked about earlier. And there are different learning activities that you can use with word walls. So word wall is simply a strategy. However, you can apply it into different activities such as a word wall scavenger hunt. And there are different ways that we can accommodate or modify this strategy, including using like dyslexia-friendly fonts. There are some fonts that are really difficult to see visually and maybe difficult for struggling readers or those with dyslexia or dysgraphia. Color coding is another way that we can separate those words and kind of make it more visually accommodating for those students. And using symbols for English language learner students next to those words is a really, really, really great way for those English language learners to make those connections between words and their meaning. So another strategy that I would love to discuss is morning journaling. And I'm sure that you guys have heard about morning journaling. There is so many ways that we can use morning journaling to really expand student growth and student creative writing. There's so many different prompts and questions and ways that we can integrate this into curriculum. So a morning journal could be also called a response journal or a dialogue journal. And it's a daily journal entry, and it's usually done during morning meeting, before or after morning meeting, but there's also like journaling that you can do at the end of the day. That also is like a reflective journal of what we had learned, and like different ways that when teachers can also use this to assess. So keeping the journals at school will allow the teacher, obviously, letting the kids know that the teacher will be looking through these journals, but that's a way that teachers can formally or informally assess student understanding and comprehension. It's a great way to practice written expression, and the teacher will propose a prompt, question, or a sentence, and students will either copy the sentence or provide a response. So for example, I was in a kindergarten classroom and there was a sentence that I posted and students practiced, I was substituting, and students practiced writing down the sentence that I put on the board that matched with a see draw activity that we did at the end of the day as a reward. So sentence composition, vocabulary implementation, applying facts and concepts in written expression are different ways that this strategy really aims to grow on written expression. It's also a great self-monitoring strategy as well, and self-monitoring is a really, really, really crucial, important part of education that teachers need to be implementing as early as possible. Here are some great resources. I really recommend checking them out to get more of an in-depth understanding of each strategy and how they can be implemented by educators. So again, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you all have a lovely week.